please help me welcome our panelists to the stage. All right, so this session is titled A People-Centered Smart City. As we kind of just discussed a little bit, people are the core to the city, right? If you don't have people in your city, then your city's maybe not running. Your city's probably not functioning. So really centering things around people and community really, I think, is the ultimate goal. So I will let my panelists introduce themselves. So Jesse, we'll start with you. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself, the city of Houston, and maybe some fun initiatives that are going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello. Hey, there we are. Hey, everyone. Hey, welcome to Houston. Yeah, I'm glad to have y'all all here. Thank you. I see a lot of friendly faces in the audience, a lot of city employees also. I really appreciate y'all being here as well. Houston is a large city. We're the 4th largest city in the country, soon to be 3rd. We're going to overpass Chicago pretty soon. We're a city that is a large city in terms of city government also. We have 23,000 city employees in 24 different departments, working 3,400 different distinct business functions. So it's a lot of different things that the city of Houston is doing. And in each one of those functions, we're doing something that is, could be considered smart city. And one of the benefits of having Houston be such a large city, we have, tier 1 research universities here. We're, home of NASA, the world's largest medical center, energy capital of the world. We have a lot of talent that's here in Houston. And that talent bleeds into our smart city program as well. Like I mentioned, our departments are really pioneering in a lot of ways smart city technology. We were the first major city in the U.S. to deploy smart water meters, for example, and we've done every kind of public safety smart city technology that there is. We're really on the cutting edge in a lot of ways, and so I just want to compliment all of the city employees who are here, who are leading the charge in the discussion. And I also just want to welcome everybody to Houston. So thank y'all for being here, and hope y'all want to discuss Houston. Find me in the panel or after the panel, and we can talk.
Jesse's ready. Houston ambassador. Next we have Heather Bishop, who's representing the city of Austin, our Austin Smart City Alliance. Heather, I'm an Austin native, Austin born and raised for 32 years, but now left. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in Austin. What am I missing? Tell us all.
Well, thank you so much. Delighted to be here, and we'll talk more because I grew up in Austin too. I'm like, what high school did you go to?
I'm ready.
So my name is Heather Bishop. I am with the Austin Smart City Alliance, but I also wear another hat. I am also in the Smart Mobility Office with the City of Austin. And we have all sorts of great stuff going on. One of the things I am most excited about is our pilot program, Smart Mobility Office. And that's where companies get to come to us and say, hey, I've got a great idea, smart mobility, smart cities. Let me tell you all about it. And they tell us what municipal purpose it has, how it's good, how it's great, how it's wonderful. They get to come in. It's obviously evaluated by a team, but they get to come in and really show us how this pilot program works. They get to show us kind of proof of concept. And then if it works out how we all think it does, then we actually get to deploy that program. And that's one way that really new and innovative projects get launched with the city. Another program we have right now, we just launched in partnership with the University of Texas and the National Science Foundation, a community hub, which is basically a hub in a transit desert that really helps solve those last mile issues in smart ways, and that's pretty exciting. Another project we currently have, which is really focused on collaboration. It's not here yet, but it's coming, and this is the University of Texas, TxDOT, Campo, really all of our major regional transportation organizations are coming together for Smart Track, which is a 3-tiered testing system, really to bring together proof of concept for innovative smart city, smart mobility innovations to really test them out in a closed system, in a semi-open system, in an open system, really see do do these things work? How do they work? And that's really designed to, again, test proof of concept, see how these things work, and really drive economic growth and innovation. And this is just some of the really great stuff that we have going on, and it's really exciting to be.
Nice. Austin seems busy.
We are.
I always say Austin's the cool kid of Texas, but I'm gonna just leave it there. It's Brian, so we just talked a lot about San Antonio with Joyce, so you don't get to share. Just kidding.
I know, right? Yeah, I think Joyce pitched it for me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about City of San Antonio, some fun initiatives that are happening. We've got a lot going on there too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Brian Dillard. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Antonio. Thank you, Zpryme and City of Houston, for hosting this wonderful event. Honestly, San Antonio's been suffering just like every other kind of major city with expansion and sprawl, and trying to identify how do we kind of mitigate the impacts of that, whether it be housing or transportation or sustainability, et cetera. In addition to that, we're also looking into, expanding our regional impact. Joyce mentioned, I-35 corridor is definitely a topic of interest for us, especially on the economic development pathway, but also transportation. I don't know why we're building more lanes for vehicles rather than just building a damn light rail, but we'll talk to Texas about that. In addition to that, we're talking about, the South Texas Triangle going down to Monterey and the Valley, identifying that there's a big economic impact there that we could be tapping into if we just connected the dots. So I think some of our younger folks are looking into that as the future of San Antonio, and how do we bridge that gap with the regional impact?
I think one of the things we talk about when we're talking about people-centered smart cities is there's always a lot of solutions of, oh, we can fix this downtown. We can give Wi-Fi to everybody downtown. So one thing that people, at least at Zpryme, always ask us is, what about the marginalized communities or communities who maybe, have been left out of the equation traditionally? So my question for all of you really is, what strategies have you implemented that engage those marginalized communities and ensure that those needs are being heard and even addressed?
Yeah, I can start. So Mayor Turner, what he didn't say in the video was that he's from one of those communities and is currently living in one of those communities. And, he has one of his premier programs and initiatives of his term it's called the Mayor's Complete Communities Program, where we've engaged with those communities. It's 10 communities in particular across the city that have been historically underserved and have really low quality of life metrics, and so we're working with those communities. We worked with them to develop action plans for each one of the communities, identified what their needs were, and then also helped solution with them. So come up with ideas and innovative interventions to improve quality of life in those neighborhoods. And so that's been a really good proactive way to really test new innovative solutions in those communities to improve quality of life. Been a really, really important challenge for us. So that's an active way. We also passively look at how we're performing as a city across different demographic factors in terms of social equity, racial equity. We look at our 311 performance. We look at the way that we're policing. Everything that we're doing as a city, we want to make sure that it's equitable, and having that kind of real, hard look at how our dollars are being spent and whether they're being spent equitably is really an important aspect of what we do.
Heather, what does that look like for Austin?
Sure. Well, I really appreciate what you were saying about the mayor in that, in terms of, for example, our community hubs, I grew up in an area with no last mile access. The nearest grocery store was 30 minutes away. The bus stop was nowhere near our community. You had to get someone to take you to the bus stop because you couldn't get to school otherwise. So for me, having an opportunity to work on last mile issues and kind of smart ways to get people connected to solve these issues is huge. And I can tell you that attitude actually permeates a lot of our city departments, because you have a lot of folks who also have had those issues working on these issues. So in terms of, for example, a concrete example for our community hub, we did surveys. We're like, hey, I mean, we know where these areas are, where maybe the closest bus stop is, miles away. But we're also going to ask the community, hey, do you have what you need? Let us know. We don't want to be presumptive. Let us know what you need. We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to come out. We're going to have some community meetings. We're going to do some surveys. We're going to talk to you. We're going to propose some solutions, but do you have some ideas and suggestions? And really that active community engagement and really using that active community engagement to address those issues. And then we're going to say, hey, we've got some solutions. How do those sound to you? Really that active two-way communication with listening and then actionable items afterwards. And again, our just the community hub is a good example of some of the things that we're doing.
I grew up in a community outside of Austin that our neighborhood didn't even have fire hydrants. And so when houses in the neighborhood would catch fire, they would just burn because the fire department only had so much water like in their truck. So, and it's a slightly different issue than the last mile, but the neighborhood now has fire hydrants.
So
Don't
that's
worry.
a really good example, just true real life experience of people working on the issues. Some of the people who have had the issues historically are actually now working actively with the people who have the issues now to collaboratively solve the problems.
I love that. So, Brian, a little bit about San Antonio. How are y'all addressing those communities?
Yeah, so I'll reflect the same way. I grew up historically disenfranchised community, high crime ridden, low investment from public government. And when the Mayor Nuremberg came in, he really wanted to focus the city with a lens of equity, identifying where do we need to hit first, where do we truly need to invest a little more than others. So we developed an equity atlas map that we kind of run everything through, from our budget to transportation to healthcare, et cetera. Efforts we put together in 2019 was a digital inclusion survey and assessment. So we knew we needed to focus on digital inclusion. We pulled it out of smart cities and said we're going to create our own team. We did a survey to identify what does the landscape look like to our residents when it comes to connectivity, quality, accessibility, and affordability. And it was dismal in areas. Luckily, we did that in 2019. We were able to report out in May of 2020, right when COVID hit and became a hot topic. We're halfway through our second version of that survey, identifying what was the impact of COVID. And as a result of that, we were able to deploy $22 million. We just signed off on a contract with AT&T, focused in on 26 census tracts that were identified in that last survey round. Those are the type of investments that we're really focusing in on based on equity. In addition to that, we just wrapped up our city survey where we did the same thing, really addressing folks' challenges rather than trying to assume that some piece of technology is going to solve a problem for everyone. Really trying to focus on those pinpoint items in those communities.
So as we focus in on those items, right? Say the community's like, I really want access to this one item. And then the city starts to give it to them, but then the community changes their mind. They realize, wait, maybe this isn't the right thing for us. Have any of you ever experienced that issue to where you were actively initiating something that you had to maybe rapidly change in the last minute to further address the community's needs better?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So honestly, our entire Smart Cities program had to take a pivot. We had a Smart Cities program established by the city manager in 2017. I was hired in as the first Smart City administrator for the city, and then my team was hired in after me as the first Smart City staff across the city. We came in, we identified that the city had just hired on a consultant to build this roadmap for us, and it was really kind of boilerplate. They didn't go to the community, they didn't talk to residents, they didn't identify what the real challenges were that we were about to invest millions of dollars into. COVID hit after our first year in, so we had to deal with that. We pivoted and did a lot of work in response to that, but now we're about to launch the real Smart Cities roadmap for San Antonio. It's called Smarter Together. That was a pivot that took 4 years to make, but I'm glad we did it because now we're going to be investing these dollars in places that really matter rather than trying to build solar Wi-Fi benches or some stupid stuff.
And honestly, Smarter Together is the best. Like, obviously, we're smarter together. Thank you, yes.
So I don't know if you've met people in Austin, but they are not shy.
They are not. We all have opinions.
They have strong opinions about what they want and need, and they will tell you. And so to that end, they will tell you where their priorities are now. They will tell you where their priorities have moved to. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with that specifically, because they will tell you, and you will adjust or pivot kind of as you need to. But I will give you a really practical example. Depending on who you are and what day you are at in your life, you may or may not love TxDOT. But it just depends. But I worked with them for a long time, and I can give you a really practical example of a project. The Central Texas Turnpike project was going full force many years ago. That's a $3.1 billion highway transportation project that was moving, and during the design phase, moving forward, everything was rosy at that time, and a neighborhood said, hey, wait a second. If you do this in this particular area, that's going to cut off our access to this, and we don't like that. And the text, very much to their credit, said, oh, well, okay. Well, we're in the design phase. What would you like? And they sat down with these two specific neighborhoods, and these are small neighborhood associations, mostly older, frankly, and they sat down with these folks, and they had designed. And they said, okay, they listened to the residents, and they the designers came back with 4 or 5 different versions. And they listened, and they iterated, and they did, in fact, come up with different designs. They had the main design, and then they had some alternates. And together, collaboratively, they came up with a design that stands to this day, that gave the citizens exactly what they wanted. It satisfied the overall plan, and it also satisfied specifically what the folks were asking for. So I do think that, contrary to popular opinion, sometimes civic organizations do actually listen, and things can actually be accomplished as a team. I'm a big proponent of collaboration and positive communication back and forth, and I do think it does actually happen.
TxDOT coming through.
Yeah, they did. They really did. They really did.
Yeah, I'd say, the vast majority of projects, smart city projects that we've dealt with, at least, don't really require that much community engagement. It's like, what community wants to complain about us putting sanitary sewer monitors in their neighborhoods to keep, the sewage down, or just smart water meters, so we don't have to. We can automatically read and bill their actual usage, and it's just I'd say like 90% of the smart city projects that we're doing are just not that controversial. When there is a controversy or a potential privacy concern, or I'll take probably one of the best examples of this recently was our ShotSpotter program. We just launched ShotSpotter, and there's definitely there were a handful of activists, mostly from not Houston, that came and spoke at City Council against it, and but then we balanced that with talking with the people who are in those neighborhoods where we're deploying the ShotSpotters, and their families are having to spend the night in a bathtub to avoid, gunfire coming in, and it's so there's an overwhelming desire to have the police be there and know when people are shooting, and not surprisingly, it's captured the fact that 90% of gunshots in Houston don't get reported, and so it's very valuable technology. We're spending police resources going and in those neighborhoods and solving crimes, and so but there was a really intensive and exhaustive process that we went through, and we have a positive interaction program is what we call it. That's been well established. I think HPD was here saying it's been since 1970 we've had this community program of policing, and so we've worked with the community partners on that, and they were all in favor of it once we described what it was and how it was going to be used. And so I just want to emphasize the fact that the vast majority of projects just don't require that deep community engagement, the focus groups, the community meetings. it's just based on a business decision, whether if you deploy this, it's going to improve the lives of Houstonians, and so we do it.
And that's what we want to do. We want to improve everyone's lives in the cities that they live in. So for a lot of these projects are based in community. So I think it's a pretty known, I guess, best practice to engage local community organizations or even nonprofits in the area who are really just entrenched in those communities and understand those needs on a deeper, more granular level, I think. So what ways are, I guess, each of your cities partnering with those local organizations or nonprofits to kind of help move forward when it comes to making your cities smarter? Let's go, Heather.
I'll start with that. So in 2015, the U.S. Department of Transportation established the Smart Cities Challenge, which was a challenge to mid-sized cities throughout the United States to come up with basically smart cities initiatives, and they were going to send grants to folks who did this the most successfully. Some of you may know, obviously Smart City Columbus, they won the grant, but there were 7 cities on the finalist list, and Austin were finalists for 2 different projects. That being said, there were 78 submissions, which is pretty great. I mean, 78 cities across the city said, hey, we love this idea of smart cities. We're going to come up with ideas and suggestions. There were also some incentives to continue the ideas after the challenge, even if you weren't a winner. So that's how committed the Department of Transportation has been towards moving the whole concept of smart cities forward. Now, the city of Austin, actually one of those requirements, however, was to engage in your community, have a nonprofit partner. So the city of Austin at that time began working with an organization called Austin City Up, which became the Austin Smart Cities Alliance. So even though we did not win that, we still committed to working with nonprofits such as the Austin Smart Cities Alliance to move these smart cities initiatives forward. So there's really a multi-pronged perspective. You have those initiatives that the city itself is moving forward, and then you have those initiatives that the community is moving forward, and then you have the intersection of the two.
I'm really deep in the nonprofit space in Austin, and so when I hear about like just little different community aspects that you have going on, that really excites me. So that's exciting. One nonprofit I'm part of in Austin is Latinitas. So they focus on getting girls of color into media and STEM. But they just expand out into San Antonio. So Brian, for you, are there any other organizations that maybe you're working with in San Antonio that maybe are outside of the box or really more community focused?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Joyce mentioned our Smart SA partnership, which is our Smart Cities partnership. On a programmatic level, that's that. We have a research and development team within the city of San Antonio. That's a partnership with Southwest Research Institute, USAA, and University of Texas San Antonio. On a more community level, though, there's at times you've got to kind of delegate some community organization, and so we did that in the digital inclusion space. We built out an organization called SA Digital Connects, and it's separate from the city and county, but the city and county funded it along with some private sector dollars, and we really put kind of the ball in their hands and said, we want the community to drive the direction that digital inclusion, digital equity is going when it comes to San Antonio and Bexar County. That's been a major focus on the device piece and the digital literacy piece. A city can invest in infrastructure, but when it comes to digital literacy and access to devices, that's a tough one to get into when it comes to budgetary and sustaining the success of that. And so we've got 200 plus partners that are part of SA Digital Connects that provide those services already. Why not empower and equip them with what they need to do a better job in their spaces? So that's really kind of the angle we take when it comes to partnerships.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I love that because really you're almost galvanizing even a much larger group of groups to continue to build upon. So I love that. Yeah. Jesse, anything for Houston?
Yeah, so Houston, most of our smart city projects, I would say, come from city employees working with vendors in a lot of cases. So industry is a good source of ideas and products and solutions. We also have hackathons, so we have broad hackathons where we just pitch out, our data and have hackers throughout the city who are technologists or interested in contributing their expertise to city, and they do hackathons. We also do very specific kind of design thinking challenges with design thinking community. That's one way to get innovative ideas. We have academic partners. We have relationships with all of our major universities here in Houston to develop solutions for the city's problem. We have blood sensors that Rice is developing just right over here. We have, University of Houston's going to be speaking today about, algorithmic responsibility and AI policy that they're working with the city to co-develop. So that's a really big source of innovation. Let's see what else so those are big channels. Yeah.
University partnerships, I think, are also really fun because those are some of the most creative ideas that really come through that people are like, that's not going to work.
And they don't have anything better to do than just to help the city out. So.
When we're talking about people-centered smart cities, one thing that we haven't really addressed is accessibility. So when it comes to like smart city technologies, how are you addressing accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities? Are there any special projects that y'all have going on that really are targeting that area?
Yeah, I can start on that. So, certainly, I'd say again, 80% or projects, smart city projects we do really don't have a disability nexus. I mean, traffic sensors and, to a certain extent, I guess there could be disability nexus. We're deploying audio pedestrian sensors to help, people cross the roads easier and who have visual impairments. And we recently deployed digital kiosks throughout the city that help both bridge the digital divide because they're basically Wi-Fi hotspots or iPhones that can help people navigate around the city, but they are also wheelchair accessible and they have mobile handoffs, so visual impaired people can access them and that type of thing. So it's definitely a part of the planning as we're looking at smart city solutions. We definitely consider the needs of people with disabilities. It's just it only applies to those forward-facing smart city projects or forward-facing needs. We've captioned all of our city council meetings and have ASL interpreters doing those, and you're able to participate virtually. And 311, we've had have some captioning on language services for those. So it's that front-facing where we want to make sure that people with disabilities have the same level of access to government services as everybody else.
I'm going to really agree. Oh, hello, that's very loud. So
You're excited. It's okay.
I'm very excited. I'm going to say I was going to really agree with Jesse in terms of the forward-facing and really think the lens, ultimately. Like, you want to view everything with that lens. And certainly the safety and the Vision Zero, obviously, you want to make sure that, as you're thinking of the safety elements, that you're including the lens of the person who may not hear, who may not see, who may not have the same physical ability as everyone else. So when you're looking at your programs and your pilots and everything, that you have that lens on so that you're thinking in a very equitable way. Other than that, I think we're definitely on the same page with that. Yeah.
So, Brian.
I would reflect on the same kind of, from built environment to digital environment, we just redid our city hall, and the main driver of that was ADA accessibility. So if you come to San Antonio City Hall, you'll notice the front of it is completely different. But also in the digital environment, access to government was a big one, especially when COVID hit and everybody had to go digital access. We revamped our entire website to make sure it's accessible and inclusive to all those. Yeah.
Emerging technologies like AVs are going to have a huge impact on the people with disabilities community, and I mean, y'all are doing a lot of work. We have Neuro, for example, which is an autonomous grocery delivery service working in Houston now. There's a partnership with Metro Lift or Metro, they're basically the transit for disabilities, people with disabilities. If you're on that list, you're able to get free groceries delivered, or well, not free groceries, but you're able to get that groceries delivered for free to your front door, and that's a really big benefit for people with disabilities.
And so even for like our community hub, there is a transit service that will take you from, point A to point B and kind of help you get basically a vehicle circulator, and the vans are ADA accessible. We sort of build it in because we have that lens. Like are you going to capture everything? Probably not on the first round, but you want to make sure that you're looking at everything from that perspective. I have the benefit of having been in a wheelchair for a good part of my adult life, so it's not too hard for me to think of it that way. I'm like, oh, well, could I do that 2 years ago? No. Okay, great. Well, I want to make sure that myself and all the folks that I know that are in the disability community can also do those things. So for some of us, it's normal to have that lens.
So, on kind of zooming out just on cities in general, I think the number one question people always have is, what about the data? What are you doing with your data? What are you doing with your data? How are you using your data? Who are you giving my data to? So how, as we're moving, into the future, data is just more readily accessible, I feel like. So how are your cities protecting data, making sure things are being covered, that you're actually even obtaining accurate data that's going to be beneficial for your future decisions? Let's talk data. Jesse, we'll start with you.
So we have a lot of really, really smart people at the city who are much smarter than I am, who are working with the data and making sure that it's protected and that from cyber threats and others. And but that's something that we're actively thinking about. I mentioned earlier that we have a partnership with the University of Houston. They recently received a National Science Foundation grant to analyze algorithmic responsibility, and you'll be hearing from Dr. Kennedy later today about some of his work. But it's true. I mean, AI with especially the expansion of generative AI, which is coming, and that's going to be a huge huge boost of productivity for the cities. It's also going to be a huge challenge for us to understand what data is feeding this algorithm? How are decisions being made with this algorithm? How do we communicate this to our citizens? What the data is doing and what the models are showing us. So all of those considerations are happening now. And I wouldn't say that we have the magic formula yet, but it's definitely something that we're actively looking at. HITS is actually our IT department has a working group right now devoted to exactly that question. And so, it's something that all cities are going to be struggling with, but we're all facing it together.
I'll approach this from the perspective of PII, or personal identifiable information. First off, the state says you're really not supposed to be collecting it. The whole red light camera, the reader, all that stuff. So we have things built into, say, our pilot program. Basically, we want to know if you are bringing a new technology or a new program to Austin, and you're saying, "Hey, we want to talk to you about this." Well, we want to know what are you doing with it before we even engage with you. We want to know what are you collecting and what are you doing with it, because you can't do certain things, and we want to follow the rules. We want you to follow the rules. So that's first and foremost. We want to ask the questions, and we sort of build that into not collecting it, masking it, that sort of thing, so that we don't have to worry later on about what you're doing with it. Don't even collect it. Or if you're collecting it, make sure it's masked so that it's not something that can even have the possibility of having problems later. We just sort of address it on the front end so we don't have to do it on the back end. And that's really, I feel like, the easiest way to avoid problems later on.
To address them when they come. Not once they've already become a problem.
For San Antonio, if we're going to spend money on something, on some type of technology and endorse it, our demand is we own the data. That's at the end of the day, that's always a statement we make. As a result of that, we developed a data governance program. It's an administrative directive back in 2021 that not only inventories our data, which is a task, but also identifies how are we utilizing that data, knowing that data's numbers and stories, how our department's collaborating comprehensively to utilize that data in a good way. A lot of cities have a lot of data, and it's just sitting there. And it's unfortunate. We're trying to change that in San Antonio. We're trying to be more productive, efficient, and effective with how we utilize that. We had a project 2 years ago, our smart streetlight pilot, and the vendor came out and they said, we want to put cameras on these things. And we said, no, you're not going to do that. We got to figure out something else. And so they were able to, execute on what they wanted to do and meet that objective by using LiDAR. We were tracking without the camera surveillance. As technology grows, you get more options to capture what you need to capture without being so invasive and intrusive into your residents' lives.
Communication. You communicated, and then we solved the problems. So, from solutions that were created from the very beginning. So it's great. It's a whole roundabout approach. I love it. So, my last question for you three. Our theme for this summit is resilient communities. I don't know if any of you do yoga, but at the end of every yoga class, you set your last intention of, here's what I want to do for the rest of my day. You do a deep breath. We don't have to do a deep breath, but let's set the intention for everyone. So when you think about resilient communities and how to make, our cities essentially limitless and have these wonderful capabilities, what are your last tips that you want to leave everyone with in creating these? You're all thinking. I can see it.
I've been saying this for years because I feel like we're really bad about it in government. Drop the egos and drop the silos. Not every department needs to have ownership over a solution. We should be sharing that. We all share the same resident, the same customer. Drop those silos, collaborate, talk to each other, make that little extra effort so that we have more impact in what you're doing for your residents and customers.
Ditto. I was going to say active listening to the needs of your residents, listening to the needs of your partners, collaboration, because in the end, what are we trying to do? We're trying to have success for the community, and the only way we're going to actually do that is by working together and not assuming, but finding out what those issues are, working together to solve those problems, and again, dropping those egos. I agree completely.
Yeah, and we take a really practical approach to smart cities, which is does the business case make sense? And if it's not a slam dunk business case, something that just makes sense, we have the data or we understand the problem. I mean, that's part of it. We need to understand the problem really is a big piece of smart cities, and then be able to communicate that problem with people who have ideas or solutions, but you still need to have that really firm business case in order to really justify, a smart city solution over another solution. We joke that one of our best solutions that we have, a smart city solution we have for our drainage operations is we got a bunch of goats and put them on our drainage ditches because you know what? Those are much more effective than any other solution that we have. So it's not necessarily about the technology, it's about the problem and solving it.
I do want to know more about the goats.
You can go check them out. Yeah.
So,
They're in the Houston Arboretum right now.
So we're gonna talk about that later. We have a few minutes left in case anyone has any questions. We can maybe take one or two from the audience if anyone has any. We have Joyce walking around. Question from Steve. Joyce is bringing the mic to you.
Thank you all for the information. That was great. Couple of questions. If I'm limited to one, I would ask, since Heather mentioned it, what did Columbus, Ohio do to win their grant specifically? What were some of the differentiators?
Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah, Columbus Columbus, Ohio, you said, was awarded the grant in 2015. What did they do specifically? What were some of the differentiators that allowed them to get that?
So I appreciate that question, and regretfully, I have not reread the grant recently. However, I can tell you that their website is fantastic.
Then I will
and
check
we'll,
it out.
And we'll give you all of the information. It's really incredible. It is multi-pronged. So that all that to say that it wasn't just one element.
Okay.
It's a pretty comprehensive proposal, and they're moving forward on it. And I would fail miserably if I tried to tell you all the pieces and parts. So I would actually refer you to the Smart Columbus website, which goes through all of it. It's pretty impressive.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if it's multifaceted, then I'll look forward to seeing that website.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tanya McConaughey Rivera with AT&T, and I have a question for Jesse, and he can get mad at me later, but we go way back. I noticed yesterday that the City of Houston and Harris County signed an MOU regarding broadband and kind of collaborating. I don't know if each of you can kind of share how you're working with your respective counties, and if Jesse, if you can give some insight on what that might look like, since the city is looking to expand broadband and reach the complete communities.
Yeah, it's a huge problem in Houston, but we're also getting a huge infusion of money from the state, from the federal government, so $62 billion is being allocated to the digital inclusion problem, and we don't have the exact numbers in the state yet, but so we think somewhere around $2 billion will flow to Texas, and we're fighting for our share in the urban areas. There's a lot of rural connectivity issues that we know about, but there's also a lot of urban areas that have connectivity issues. We have some of those complete communities in particular are, have less than 50% internet adoption at a household level. So, we're Harris County. You'll hear from John Spears later, who I don't see here yet, but he's really been a leader in this space in Texas, and we're working with him to make sure that we're aligned and synced. Brian, they're doing some awesome work over in San Antonio on digital inclusion also, and so it's we're following the lead of the State Development Office in a lot of ways, but State Broadband Development Office. But what do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I feel like since we've signed that contract with AT&T 2 weeks ago, I can speak candidly. I will say ISPs are finally stepping up. They're admitting that there's a problem. I think it has to do with the standards changing from that 25 down, 3 up to 120. That's making them go back to these antiquated copper lines and say, all right, these communities need more. One of the big gaps, and Jesse referred to it, is the state federal funding. That money is FCC maps and the state maps. The maps data that's in there is provided by ISPs. Currently, our major cities are not qualified for the funding from federal or state levels. And that's because we are identified as serviced. I've got communities and neighborhoods in San Antonio that only have satellite service, HughesNet, and then the Starlink stuff. That's not affordable and it's not reliable, but those communities are marked as serviced on those maps. Therefore, they are not qualified for that funding. That is something that we need ISPs help with at the legislative level to influence and say, hey, we really need to be true about the data that's in there. I appreciate what ISPs are doing now. I think we can do more together. Our last RFP where we just submitted this contract, signed the contract, was actually with Bexar County and San Antonio. We put out a joint RFP. The county is now negotiating with Spectrum. We signed our contract with AT&T, but we are serving neighborhoods in those priority areas that have been disconnected for decades. Thank you.
And I think Brian really addressed some of the key issues and concerns there. Right now, one of the programs that I'm working on specifically is the community hubs, and really looking forward to making sure that they have what they need because we want connectivity there and we don't have the level of connectivity there that we need. And so maybe I need to be talking to you. So really looking to make sure that those areas where we know that they don't have the service and they're transit deserts, they're service deserts, and we need to get them what they need, and we're actively working on that. And so please feel free to talk to me. Thank you.
Nice. I think we have time for one more question. Right here in the front. From Clay. Because I can read his badge.
Thanks for the presentation. Last week, a couple of us were at a Transforming Local Government program in Kansas City, which I highly recommend. But one of the things that came out of that was from the Intelligent Cities Forum, and they talked about smart cities as an ends to a meaning it's not about the technology. We're trying to build stronger cities. And some of you touched on partnerships and so forth. I actually think that's a better framework to trying to get more people on board, because it doesn't come off as a technology solution. It's trying to build stronger communities. But I wonder if you could react to that and see if you agree or disagree, to what degree.
I think that's it, absolutely, because what are we trying to accomplish? Technology is great, but what is technology for? Ultimately, our goal is to improve the quality of life for our citizens. That's what we're doing. Tech for tech's sake is not the same as ultimately improving the quality of life. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what municipalities are for. That's what cities are for, is we're here to serve the citizens. So if you're going to incorporate technology, you need to do it for the benefit of the citizens. It is ultimately people-centered, and the use of technology to improve the quality of life, goods, services, everything in the communities. So yes, partnerships to better our communities. It's a little
We
repetitive,
got some
but you know
goats
what I
for
mean.
you also. So yeah. Goats, yeah.
Brian, you have a smart sandbox initiative, right?
We have a smart sandbox item. So instead of just throwing stuff up on telephone poles or putting it on your sidewalk, we actually have what we call Smart SA Sandbox, where it's a community event. It's usually in a park in an underserved area, and we have hundreds of residents come out, from little kids to older adults, identifying this technology, breaking it apart. I mentioned the smart streetlight pilot that we did a couple years ago. Before we put them on streetlights, we had the technology on a table. We had the vendor there explaining what each component was and what it did for the resident. That's something that we continue to move forward with, whether it's on the AV side or just the website, honestly, identifying, like, getting input. That dialogue that you mentioned, Heather, that's an opportunity in person to have dialogue. We have those every quarter.
Nice. Well, that's just about time. Please join me in thanking our panelists this morning.